Hello, hello, hello. It is a beautiful day. So I'm making this outside, and I don't know if you're like this, but I can't wear my sunglasses while talking to people because I feel like it's weird that I'm like, you can't see my eyes. In fact, all you can see is a reflection of me holding the phone looking at you. It makes me uncomfortable. So I'm going to squint a little bit. And hopefully the internet will work out here, but I'm going to show you my flowers. There's some. My little flowers. This is a hilarious plant that's supposed to look like that, and somehow I managed to make it look like that scraggly Dr. Seuss plant. This is a beautiful thing that blooms at night. These are the flowers. They're bright yellow and they're so gorgeous. And then my tomatoes, which are growing so beautifully. This tomato plant did a kamikaze dive off the balcony, so it's got some new growth, but it lost all of its original tomatoes. And then my very dead cilantro, because I can't grow herbs. My flower boxes. Strawberry. Look at that yumminess. So red that I thought. Anyway, that's my world. And my peace lily that has lots of flowers. Oh, okay. That's the tour of my little baby garden. But I just got out of an energy healing session, and I had this really subtle way. I want to talk about this really innocent place, which is the desire to be helped. And so when we have this desire of like, someone help me, I'm in pain, I know I could feel differently, I want support, there's like a tiny shift that's like, I want support because I don't have the tools or the lessons or the knowledge, and I need somebody to help me, save me, do it for me. And this shows up in ways that even are really like harmless, right? Like calling in the archangels, or calling in guides, or calling in angels, or calling in Mother Mary, or calling in these beautiful energies. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. That's not what I'm saying. Don't. I'm not shaming anybody, including myself, because I've done this myself as recently as this weekend. There's nothing wrong with calling in supportive energies, as long as it's not a very, very subtle way that we're victimizing ourselves. I'm not strong enough. I don't have the power. I can't do this myself. Somebody else has to do it too. Fine, I will go inside. The Wi-Fi is not working out here, which is really a bummer because it's literally right through that window. Well, we'll see. We'll give it one more try. Because there's a difference between holding space for healing and asking something to heal for you. And I have noticed in my own journey that I've wanted something to heal for me. Like whether that's another person, like a really gifted energy healer, or somebody who's super talented, and I'm like, oh, you're going to heal me. Or like, oh, I called in the energy of Jesus. Jesus is going to heal me. And it's like that same pattern coming up, right? Like somebody else do this for me because I am powerless and I've sort of abdicated responsibility for myself because of whatever reason. I'm not good enough. Whatever, we all have our story. And so I realized today in this healing session, I was laying on the table, and this guy, amazing energy worker, I suppose you could call it, but it's more than that and less than that and different than that. And, was helping me breathe, and was helping me experience myself in new ways. And then at one point I felt this like pressure on my knees, but he wasn't doing it. And I was like, oh, wow, it feels like there's God in the room, angels in the room, something's in the room. And I was like, oh, wow, helping me. And then I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Because there could be, I could conceptualize it that way, but it's also me, and it's also my nervous system, and it's also the way that I just shifted. And now I have this sensation of being held. And if I shift, and I can create and discover a sensation of being held, then it's in my system, right? It's in my nervous system. I can attribute it to other beings. I can attribute it to angels helping me, supporting me, and healing. But it's also me and my perception. And then I thought, well, if that's the case, then it doesn't have to be distinct entities, right? It doesn't have to be a specific angel or a specific emulation, right? Like Mother Mary or something like that. Because it's all the space around us. And I had this full body sensation of, well, what if all the space is God? What if all this space around us right now is holding us in the most tender and gentle embrace, as if we were a 2-year-old just sitting on the lap of God, getting to feel all that we feel and being held so delicately. And at the same time, as we allow for the openness and the vulnerability and the giving over that we would to somebody healing us, to somebody nurturing and nourishing us, at the same time, we are the most brilliant, vibrant, purest light aspect of that totality. So at the same time as we are in that ultimate space of vulnerability and please heal me, then we're also at the same time in the most empowered space of, and I am everything. And I had this really felt experience. And if you're just joining, you probably have to go back a little bit to figure out what I'm talking about. But I just had this beautiful experience in a session with just a really incredible person. I don't even know how to describe what they do because none of the terms really fit. But they are on their own path of awakening, and they offer opportunities to experience what they can support you in. So shifting energy in the body, breathing, deepening, all of that. And so I'm in this session feeling what feels like a presence, feeling like my body impacted, like I felt like my knees were being pushed down and I felt held. And I was like, wow, I've never felt this before. It must be an angel. And then I moved my neck and I was like, oh, maybe it's my perception. Maybe it's my energy opening and allowing for the feeling of being held. And I was like, well, if that's the case, why limit it? Why limit it to just an angel who heals me? Why not allow for everything, literally the air touching me, to be God? And all of a sudden I had this sensation, I'll just repeat it, I just had this sensation of just being completely enveloped and held like you would a child, like held by life, by God, by whatever you want to call it. And this incredible like release, like the sobbing of like, oh, I can let down now. This is where I can let go. And at the same moment of that, like, let go, all of a sudden I felt, and also I'm the most brilliant aspect of this totality right here. And that's the two things, right? That we can want to be healed, and yet we are the healer. And we can want to be helped, and yet we're the helper. And we can want answers, and yet we're the answer. And both of those things are true. Both of those things are true. And where we get into a little bit of a pickle is when we forget one of the two, right? We either get so much in, I'm the answer, I'm the answer, I'm the answer, like I gotta shine bright, and I gotta do this, and I gotta do this, and that we lose the giving over in the way that a child would just give it all to a caring adult and be like, oh, just hold me until I fall asleep because this is hard and sad. Or we lose the brilliance because we're so in the giving over, we move into victim, right? I can't do this on my own. I don't have the capacity and the tools. We lose the light. But both of them are there. And so it just seems so obvious to me. I was like, that's hilarious. Like, it's just funny. It's funny. It's funny that we have to, that I even think that I have to strive for one thing or another. It's funny that I even have to think, like, oh, as I put on my face cream, I repeat the word flawless because I'm energetically creating flawlessness. I am flawless. Flawless has nothing to do with spots. It's the whole picture, and it's flawless because it is. And it was laughable. It was laughable, the way that we forget the two parts of it, the wholeness of giving over and the wholeness of being the light. And yet somehow we'd only do half. I'm only half the light, so I need help. I need saving. And I'm only halfway released because I'm not in my power that I'm the light. It was really powerful. It was really just one of those moments where you're like, duh, duh. And I didn't even know how to capture it in this conversation because there's so many parts to it, right? And there's so much more I want to say. There's so much more that came out of this last 2 hours that was like, duh, duh, duh. And I want to capture it for myself, right? I want to capture it because I want to say the words. I want to speak them into form. And a lot of it's around desire. So I'll let it integrate, and I'll talk more about desire tomorrow. Oh, hold me to that, by the way. But this victimness, like shying away from the fact that we are all of the light, because as if that implies something, as if that implies we can't be soft, as if that implies we then have to handle everything, as if that implies that we are not still in space, right? And that's the funny part. We get so focused on what's inside the space, we forget about the space. But like, it's funny. I said this to the guy. I said, it's funny. It's silly to think we could ever be alone. It's silly. Because while you're alone, your aloneness is only marked by the space around you. And that space means you're never alone, because the space is there and the space is alive. I don't know if you can feel it just by tuning into it. Tune into it on your skin, tune into it in the room. You could hear it. You can feel the pressure of it. You can sense what that space is like. We've all walked into places and been like, oh, it's a happy place, or it's not a happy place, right? The space holds something. And so the idea that we could ever be alone, it doesn't make sense. We're only us because of the other, and so the other is always there. Just like we're only ever the light because we are the giving over of the light, right? We are the pain. We are the pain that needs held by the space, and at the same time, simultaneously, the light that is the space. And so when we subtly look to other people and ask them to fix us, then we're on a very deep level losing our own dignity of soul, right? It's not losing power. It is sure fine empowerment and all that, but on a spiritual level, if we're subtly spiritually victimizing ourselves, then what we're losing is the dignity of the soul. And that doesn't feel good, right? Like that is a big deal. Because the soul is where we get our strength from. The soul is who we are. The soul can't be marred, right? Like it's not like the soul is getting bigger or smaller. That's not what I'm saying. But the way that we dignify it, the way that we honor it, and the space that we give it within ourselves to be truth changes. So let's think of some examples, right? Like let's think of some everyday examples. So I have been in this situation many times for years because I was just in this mindset of looking at, and I'll give examples from my own life. So just in my business of like looking to different coaches to be like, oh, is she the one who's going to save me? Is she the one who's going to give me the clarity I'm looking for? Is that person the person who has the tool that I need or the technique that I need to solve all of these problems that I'm having? And guess what? Every single person I worked with, it didn't help. Not because they're not brilliant, but because I wasn't owning it. I wasn't owning the light. I was sitting on the lap of God crying, but I wasn't owning that I'm everything and the brilliance that's already there and the most brilliant aspect of it, right? And I don't mean that in an ego way. I mean that in the spiritual sense. The imagery of at the same time giving over and being the light. And how do we hold that? How do we hold that dichotomy, that seeming dichotomy? That in our most vulnerable, most weak, we're also the most pure, brilliant, radiant aspect of all life. Right then and there. And so another example, like when I quit my job in the government, I moved to New Zealand and I spent, pardon the language, but shit tons of money. I think that's the actual formal definition for how much I spent. A shit ton. A shit ton of money on healers, right? I went to doctors. I went to a woman who would rock me back and forth, like to loosen up my fluids or whatever we were doing, put my cells in the same vibration. I don't know. I went to somebody who would like take me in a hot bath and like a big, which by the way is an amazing treatment and I absolutely loved it. And still reference it in my body, like that feeling. It's called Waiatsu, that beautiful being in the water. I went to like postural people. I went to, structural people. I went to emotional healers. Like I went to acupuncture. Like I went to everybody trying to fix me. And I didn't learn the lesson then, right? I then moved it into a business and then asked all these people to fix my business. And then I moved it into the money context and asked people to fix my money problems. And then I moved it into relationships. Well, I was already there in relationships and asked people, other people, my boyfriends, to fix my unlovableness, fix my insecurity. And that was actually the first one I cleaned up. The first place that I was able to feel being the light at the same time as giving over. And I worked with Nicole Moore, as many of you know, on that for a year, on relationships. And so today I really got, like I really got it on like a soul level, like on a body experience level, that it's so easy to victimize ourselves when we are looking for support just with our own expectation of like, maybe this is the thing. Maybe I'm going to be different after this. Maybe it's going to change my whole life. And even in those thoughts, there's this subtle messaging of I'm broken, I need to be fixed, everything's not okay as it is, something's wrong, blah, blah, And that subtle messaging is the victimization. That subtle messaging is what impacts that sensation of dignity in ourselves. And I am signing up first number one on the list of people who does this. As recently as last weekend going into this retreat that I went to. And today while I was laying on that table, I was like, yeah, this guy's here and this guy's helping me, but I am doing this. I am the one opening. And I am the one being available. And I am the one who has the opportunity to say opening doesn't even matter. And then I had this realization of when we teach yoga, it doesn't matter if the body's like this. We can teach you how to find the energetic alignment regardless of the structure of the body. So why am I so stressed about being open? Why am I self-perfecting? Why am I pushing myself here? It's another form of victimhood, right? That I can't have something because I'm broken and somebody needs to fix me. I can't fix myself. So these subtle messages that we're sending to ourselves impact us more deeply than we know. They impact us so deeply. And what I'm discovering, really truly discovering, and I say really truly because I mean on a felt level, like on a, oh duh, that's obvious level, like, oh, I get it. There's going to be more to be gotten, but I get it in this sense now. What I'm really getting at this moment and putting words to is that we don't have to look very far, right? And that when we do bring in support, it's support to literally support us, not to do it for us. And I know all of us have had this realization in some aspect of our lives, right? Because every single person here, we wouldn't know each other if we weren't competent, brilliant, beautiful people who are leading the charge in some aspects of our lives. So we all have this knowledge, right? We have this knowledge that, oh yeah, you've got to do it yourself not in a bad way, not in like, oh, I'm stuck with myself, but like, that's where it is. That's where the juice is. And so I can get people to give me like the blanket underneath me and around me, but I'm the one who gets to make the mojo happen, right? But to feel that on a level that touches into, am I whole? Am I good enough? Oh, I had an ant in my shoe and I tried to flick it and smooshed it, but hopefully, oh no, I only half smooshed it. What's the compassionate thing in this moment? Is the compassionate thing to let it try to live, or is the compassionate thing to smoosh it more? He seems pretty feisty. Oh, these are the tough philosophical decisions of my life. What were we talking about? Oh, so when it comes to this deep individual level, to the soul level, it's like these beliefs that am I broken, these beliefs that am I flawed, these beliefs that, but I'm somehow separate from God, and so I guess there's something wrong with me. Like that core essential pain of being separate from life. That's where all of us on a deep, deep level can get into this really, really fine line between victimizing ourselves on the deepest level, right? Of there's something wrong with me that I'm separate from God, and so I need validation, I need assurance, I need support, I need, not support, but saving of my soul. Because I'm not sure that I'm pure. I'm not sure that I'm all that. I'm not sure that I'm brilliant. I may feel it every now and then in these moments of awakening, but really I'm not sure. Because a lot of times I live with the pain of this separation, so am I really all of that? And then we look to people to be like, oh, you're a big soul. Ooh, you're here for big things, right? And it feels good, but it also feels bad because I'm like, why am I getting off on that? Why am I getting off on somebody telling me that I'm all that? That's weird. I don't really need you to say it, and it doesn't really gel because if you're saying it, then we're in a power imbalance or a hierarchy or a dynamic that implies that you're not all that. So like at the same time as we want to hear that, right? Because that part of the soul is like, damn, save me. That part of the psyche is like, damn, save me, right? Save my soul that's separate. The other part of us is like, that's not really true. That's not true for the soul. That's the ego version of the soul. And so we walk this fine line between victimizing our own selves, our own souls, our own spiritual awakening. And I don't even want to say leading the charge of it. I don't even want to say being present for it, because it is. It just is. And being it. So this got me thinking, of course, about the work that I do and the things that I do. And I talked about it yesterday, but I just launched this 30-day challenge, and I'm like, so what does that mean? Like, we're talking about breaking beliefs. Like, why would you join a thing? Why would we go through steps? Why would we even wiggle around? Why would we even wiggle around on the level of breaking beliefs? Right? And like, why the hell do you need other people to help us? You, me, us, right? And I was thinking about how the challenge actually flows and the 9 steps in it. And one of the things that really struck me is one of the very first things we do is what I call transcend the paradigm. And we take this question that we've been wrestling with. Am I enough? Am I not enough? Am I lovable? Am I not lovable? That we've been seeking out proof for in every experience, right? And most of the time finding negative proof and then using it to validate our own self-concern and thus getting stuck. Is that so we're in this pattern of going back and forth and looking for validation and looking for this, which means when most of us think, okay, I'm going to go to break this belief, we do it with affirmations. We do it with like the opposite. We're like, oh, well, if I could just flood myself with the opposite, then I'll disprove this thing over here as not being true, this belief over here. But we're still playing the game of victimization, right? Because we're still looking for validation. We're just changing the storyline. And now the validation's coming from within, or we're noting it, or we're only looking for it, and we've got blinders on, and I'm like, I'm only looking for proof that I'm good enough, instead of proof that I'm not good enough. But still we are externalizing. We're still externalizing. And So we haven't really solved the problem, right? We've just replaced the problem with positive validation instead of negative validation, which doesn't get us anywhere in the long term, because on a bad day or a bad month or a bad year, we can easily fall back into the other side and think like, well, what was the point? What was the point? I guess I just fooled myself. And part of the process of the challenge that we do, I don't know if it's step 4. I think it's step 4. Really very soon is we shift the paradigm. Because we've got to get out of that duality. We've got to get out of the duality of, am I good enough or am I not good enough? Am I lovable? Am I not lovable? Is money evil or is money good? Like, we've got to get out of that whole game, because that whole thing is just looking for external validation, one way or the other, trying to prove something to ourselves, right? And that's what the mind loves to do. But if we want to get to a place of like soul expansion and feeling really centered in ourselves, then we've got to get out of the mental game. We've got to get out of the ego game. And I am not a believer that the ego is bad, so I'm not going down that road. Just footnote. I'm a lover of the ego, because it's got a role to play here, right? In moving us forward, particularly with what we want. I will not get distracted by desire right now. Okay, we'll talk about desire tomorrow. Okay, but we shift the paradigm so that we're not constantly using the mind to assess and analyze these two different things, and we shift it to something else. And what we shift it to is the outcome, right? So instead of looking for validation one way or another, we shift it to looking and thinking about and navigating and mulling on and chewing on and learning about what it's like to hold the energy of being past that. And that's where stuff gets really juicy, because now all of a sudden it comes to us. It comes home. And we've taken that very, very subtle victimization out of our own self-expansion and just brought it right back home, but in the most easy, obvious way. And then in the rest of the 30-day challenge, we fight with it, right? Because we're like, wait, it can't be that easy. It can't be that easy. That's not blah, 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 blah. And then we fight about it, and that's the fun part for me, to get to argue with people all day long who argue for their own limitations, pointing back there. But that's what I mean. That's support. That's not saving. In that 30-day challenge, I don't save anybody. I support. That first week is a little bit of a lift to get people back into themselves, right? So that we're not victimizing ourselves, so that we're not looking for saving, so that we're not looking for external answers. But after that first week, when you're back in yourself, yeah, we're in for a little bit of a fun ride, because, we get to argue. And I like that part. But it's you, right? It's not me doing anything. My 9 steps that I take you through, I'm not going to save you. I'm not going to do it for you. If you don't move through each one of those steps, and it's not like, here's your homework, you barely even notice that there's steps, but it's not like, oh, if you do these 9 steps, then you're going to be saved. That's not what it's like. That's not what it's like. It's these 9 steps are like the opening doors in front of you to yourself. So that instead of being saved, you bring it right back home and you're like, oh, that's where it was the whole time. I know now. I know how to feel good now. I know what to do to feel good now. I know what makes sense. I know how to sit in this. I know how to speak for myself. I know how to stand in myself. And that's why I do these challenges a couple times a year, because guess what I need? To deepen that, to deepen that, to deepen that, to deepen that. And what I've seen people do in this process is nothing short of miraculous. Right? Like, we got one person who's gone from always putting other people's opinions first, always, about everything, including their own self-worth, to then being so embodied in her own power. And not in a weird way, not in like, I'm powerful, so let me show it to you. No, I mean just so present with her own self, present with her own being. That now she can speak desire and other people unfold magic for her. That's a lifetime shift. That is a shift. Now, she's been in 2 of the challenges, the first 2. But damn straight, she's ramping up for the 3rd. You know what I mean? Because once you have that, you're like, we've had people in the challenges realize after years that they actually can shift the status in their relationships. Leave it, dive deeper into it, blah, blah, blah. We've had people realize the whole focus is entirely off and like, wow, why am I beating myself up about that for the last 40 years? What a waste. Now I'm going to creatively express. Now I'm going to let myself do these things that I've always wanted to do, not because I have to succeed, but because it's the natural extension of who I am. And like, that's what I mean is that we put these pressure on ourselves. We put this pressure on ourselves to do and be and have something and shift and change and open and do all of this because we think we have to as a self-perfection tool. And when we think we have to, then we look for people to do it for us and to validate that it's happening, and then the results to validate that it's happening. And all of that on a very deep soul level is victimizing. But when we tune into the integrity of self, and what I like to call the allegiance with self, then all of that unfolding is a supportive process of just being you and not trying to make you better or different because you're already whole. And I really, really felt that today. I really, really felt it in my whole being. Laying on that table and feeling the space around me give me the biggest hug, like I could just let it go. Like I could just sit there as if I was sitting on Santa's lap and just sob and tell him everything I want and cry and just be. And at the same time realizing that in that beautiful, held, gentle vulnerability, we are simultaneously the most brilliant, powerful being of all of life, because all of life is coming through us, right? And that duality is what we learn to hold, and that duality is where we start to explore how we're losing touch with one or the other, the softness or the brilliance. I think that's good. I think that's enough. So obviously I want you to join me in the challenge. I'm watching some ants and thinking about what I want. And obviously I want you to join me in the challenge. Why? Why do I want you to join me in the challenge? The real reason. There's so many little reasons, you know. I'm like, because it'd be fun, because we get to hang out, because blah, 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 because I want it to succeed, because I want other people to know about it. But like, none of those feel like the heart reason. Why do I want you to join me in the challenge? Because I want you to love yourself really deeply and release some of the patterns that don't allow you to love yourself in a way that is supportive for you and allows you to build your own team instead of trying to find somebody, find a team to make it better, but build your own team that's like the trampoline underneath you so that you can leap. Even if leaping is just leaping for joy. You don't have to leap into anything magnificent because you're magnificent already. So that's the truth. Because I know that the challenge lets you love yourself and accept yourself without the seeking and grasping. And I hope that you tune into this feeling that I was talking about today, this feeling of being held by the space around you. And the knowingness that it's still, we're never alone. We're never alone because this space is here. This space is an inherent part of our own self-concept. So we can't be alone without defining ourselves in reference to the space. And so that space is always there. And if you let it hug you, let it wrap around you, let it come right in your lungs, and realize like, oh, you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. The space is breathing you. The space is holding you. It's literally like you're floating in air, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything to earn that holding. And that's the unconditional, right? That's the unconditionalness that lets us embrace the brilliance. Because at the same time as the space is, we are, right? We are part of it. We're part of the totality that includes the space. Or perhaps, yeah, we're part of the space. So I hope you feel into that today. I hope you really feel it, and I would love to hear your reactions to what I've said. Arguments are fine. I love arguments. So if you're like, you're full of shit, let's hear it. Because that's where we get into the good stuff. Okay. Mwah.